Karen,
Yes.
question for you.
What's that?
Did Curious George have a tail?
Curious George did not have a tail.
Did not have a tail?
No.
See, I always remember him having a tail. Now,
Maybe.
what about Mickey Mouse? Did he wear suspenders?
No.
Of course he wore suspenders. What are you
Never
talking
wore
about?
suspenders.
You and
The
I-
shorts just ended at the short.
We're from different realities, I swear. Now, do you remember if the little dude on the Monopoly game had a monocle?
Now I'm second guessing. Like I would think yes, but maybe that's Mr. Peanut that I'm thinking about.
Well, you're right, actually. That's what people are saying. I do remember Mr. Monopoly having a monocle, but people are saying that he didn't. And so then last question, what was it that Snow White chanted into the mirror when she asked a question?
This one I've heard before, but
Yeah.
apparently, what do I remember her chanting? Or
Yeah.
what?
What do you-
Yeah, mirror, mirror on the wall.
Uh-huh. Well, that's not exactly what she said, according to what people are saying. Then the main question is, could we really have jumped into a new reality? And some of us are just remembering the old one in those instances. Or are we just remembering things incorrectly because of a weird type of telephone game where one person misremembers something and spreads it around because of the bad memories that we might all have? Well,
Both are possible, I think.
that's a very good point. Yeah. Today, of course, we are talking about the phenomenon known as the Mandela Effect, where masses of people remember things very differently from each other. And today's guest says that she absolutely has the answer to this mind-altering question. We're diving into it on this episode of The Skeptic Metaphysicians.
My name is Will.
And I'm Karen.
And unlike Mulder and Scully,
we both want to believe.
so we've embarked on a journey of discovery.
We've talked to people deeply entrenched in the spiritual and metaphysical world.
We've thrown ourselves into weird and wonderful experiences. I even joined a coven of witches.
And wait, you joined a coven?
Yep, all in the interest of finding something
Anything.
that will prove that there's something beyond this physical,
three-dimensional world we all live in.
This is the Skeptic Metaphysicians.
Hi, I'm Will.
And I'm Karen.
And today we're tackling the topic of reality jumping to help us get a handle on all the quantum leaping we're doing. Sorry, I had to do it. We've brought on the foremost expert in shifting realities, Cynthia Sue Larson. Now, she is the best-selling author of several books, including Quantum Jumps, Reality Shifts, and High Energy Money. She has a degree in physics from UC Berkeley, so you know we're not just talking about the woo here.
Mm-hmm.
And she's the founder of Reality Shifters, also the first president of the International Mandela Effect Conference, the managing director of Foundations of Mind, and the creator and host of Living the Quantum Dream podcast. Now, she's been featured in incredible shows like those found on Gaia, the History Channel, Coast to Coast AM, which I was an avid fan of, One World with Deepak Chopra, and the BBC. I don't want to talk anymore. I want to bring her on the show. Cynthia Sue Larson, thank you so much for coming on the show and being with us.
Thank you, Will. Pleasure to be with you guys.
Now, did I posit the topic well? Are those the questions that you hear all the time? People are asking when you're talking about the Mandela Effect?
Yes, those are typical examples of the Mandela Effect, and there are lots more having to do with products, physiology, geography, you name it. Pretty much anything and everything is open to this particular phenomenon, which some people just want to back away from. It sounds too weird. But others, when it's happened to them, some of the reporters looking into it are just astonished by things that they know for sure used to be one way and now they're different. Like that mirror, mirror on the wall. I mean, that's absolutely what I remember the witch saying when she was looking in the mirror.
Oh, yes.
And
it was not magic mirror on the wall. Who said that?
Well, apparently the witch of the Snow White.
They went through and edited everything. All the websites, all the old movies.
Right. That's a much more plausible possibility than... Right. So then, Cynthia, how is it possible that we're remembering things differently? How can that be?
Well, there are lots of possible reasons for that. And I personally love to get into the quantum physics explanations for this.
I love it.
I love it too. However, it doesn't necessarily make things crystal clear and perfectly understandable as one might hope.
Because I love it a little bit less now. Okay.
Because now you only really like it.
Right.
Because in this area, the quantum interpretations of what's going on with quantum theory, those are not yet pinned down and finalized. We have some discussion going. So we've got everything from the multiverse that a lot of people have heard about to things people have not so much heard about, such as quantum Bayesianism, cubism.
Gesundheit.
Exactly. But it gets into this idea of subjectivity, perhaps having a lot more to do with what we're noticing. Things like what Eric Cavalcanti, the physicist, calls Wigner bubbles of reality bubbles, which means maybe we have a subjective sense and awareness of what's going on, and maybe it doesn't even agree with what we think happened. So it's possible for us to be witnessing literally different realities.
Oh, I am chomping at the bit to tell you something, but Karen, go ahead first, because
that just really explains the whole phrase when someone bursts your bubble.
I love it.
Get out of town. Karen with the pulling out the wisdom already in the show.
Every once in a while, I get lucky.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. That was brilliant. Love it, Karen.
Okay, so then let's back up a little bit. For those that may not be aware, if they've been living under a rock somewhere and they haven't heard of the Mandela Effect, I know that it happens to be named after a very specific instance in our history. Can you talk to us about where this all came from?
Yes, it originated with the memory that a lot of people had that Nelson Mandela died while he was incarcerated in prison on Robben Island. And in that reality, he did not go on to become the president of South Africa, but we know he did become president of South Africa. So this is quite a conundrum. And the term came to be popularized after it was first mentioned. I would want to give credit to Art Bell on Coast to Coast.
Oh, I loved Art Bell. Loved Art Bell.
He doesn't get nearly enough credit because he was getting deluged with faxes back in the day and phone calls and people calling in just saying, what happened to Nelson Mandela? Why do we think that he died when he didn't? But Fiona Broom popularized the term around 2009. So for the last, decade or more, we've been talking about this Mandela Effect. Art Bell himself asked me if I would call it the Mandela Effect. I said no, because, to me, that even the example of Nelson Mandela having died, for some of us, I remember that he died too. I remember the whole thing about his widow and what was going on with the property, the estate, and it was just so sad when he passed away when he was incarcerated, because it just seemed like such a waste of life. But then, of course, that didn't happen. So
how did he just pop back into your reality? Like all of a sudden he's not dead, or like how?
He's not the only one. Yeah, this is definitely something that some celebrities seem to go through, at least from our standpoint. How does it happen?
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, you ask, hey, is so-and-so dead? And you look it up. No, he's still alive. I could have sworn he died, right? You get that all the time.
Absolutely. Yeah, I brought it up in my book, Reality Shifts, because the actor Larry Hagman, he passed away. And then in my reality, he was alive again. And I'm not the only one that noticed that. So before there was the Mandela Effect, I didn't call it the Hagman Effect. I called it alive again.
Right. Well, at that point, it might have been the Who Killed JR Effect, right? Because that whole thing with the Dallas, the TV show, Who Killed JR, he played JR Ewing in that show. And that some people say that that's why you remember him dying, because of that show. And of course, the next season we came back and suddenly it had all been a dream. So it kind of matches reality. Maybe is that like the Illuminati trying to just, you see nothing, like the Force, like these are not the droids you're looking for, kind of thing?
Those are good questions. I don't have the answer. I mean, some people do theorize that maybe there are some dark forces afoot. Maybe somebody's tampering with technology that they shouldn't have access to, and all that good stuff. I don't think we need to go there with these explanations, because when I look for evidence of this phenomenon, I see it going back way before there were any cyclotrons, before there was the Large Hadron Collider. So
I was just going to bring up that fact. A lot of people are kind of pointing their fingers at CERN, right? That's CERN. I don't know how you pronounce it, but CERN, that massive collider that they have. People are saying that that's actually causing us to alter realities, and some people think that it's going to open up a black hole and tear up our physical reality and destroy us. All kinds of things, but you don't think that has anything to do with it then?
I see that the effect of the phenomenon go back prior to the time of cyclotrons. And so Mary Rose Barrington, she's a researcher that was noticing what she called just one of those things, JOTT. And she was a paranormal researcher in the United Kingdom, also very well respected. And she wrote a book about it. And her information goes back like more than 100 years of reports and stories about this phenomenon. So I would say it's safe to recognize that this is an ongoing situation, that it's as strange as it may seem, it's part of being human. And thanks to the internet, we're starting to share experiences, find out more about these things, get to the heart of what the reality really is.
So then do you think this could have happened before the Mandela effect, right? For lack of a better term, before Mandela's death or
Yes.
not death?
Absolutely. Yeah, because I was writing about it back in the 1990s. I've been experiencing it all my life. And Mary Rose Barrington, as I just said, she's got documented reports going back to the early 1900s. So this is quite remarkable that we've got a phenomenon with a long established history. And I'm looking for the science. I'm looking to find out what can we show from perhaps a new way of viewing quantum theory, quantum physics that could explain this. And consciousness seems to play a big role. If we look at the subjective nature of each of our ability to observe reality, that seems to be playing a big role too. So we can gather the evidence and to see, where is it taking us?
Well, before we get into the science of it, can you tell me what are some of the earliest documented examples of this? I'm so curious now. What did she find?
Okay. She was noticing, like I said, just one of those things. So she had reference to sort of this whole syntax of things like walkabouts and comebacks. And, she had different terminology to follow to explain it. But these were things that we might notice, just household items disappearing or just appearing, like arriving out of nowhere. I would call it disappearing and reappearing. And she had slightly different terminology, but she was putting ads in newspapers and periodicals to get people to share their reports because she was certain this was definitely happening, definitely a thing. As far as I know, there weren't reports of people being alive again. That would be my terminology for it. A certain specific variation of the Mandela effect. But she's absolutely noticing on a case-by-case, very personalized basis, these, what I would call reality shifts.
Okay, so it wasn't like everyone thinking Ricky Ricardo said, Lucy, you got some splaining to do, and he never said that.
No.
There wasn't like a
I
mass
swear,
group. It was just individual.
I was there. I saw him say it. Okay.
I did too. That one, that was huge. I know. I think I said that to Art Bell when he interviewed me. I said, you've got some splaining to do.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Is, yeah.
I love this conversation. It jazzes me up so much. Something happened. I got to ask you a question because I can't hold it back any longer. Something happened to me not long ago, like last week, as a matter of fact, as I was traveling. So before I get into it, the people who have listened to this episode, the beginning of this episode, will have heard the story. So I'm just going to give you a truncated version of the story, so I don't bore the audience. But before I go into it, is it possible for someone to actually notice a shift? Or is it something that happens and we don't notice until after the fact, like in the middle of it happening?
I have noticed it in the middle of it happening. So yes, it's totally possible. It's happened a few times. And it's really astonishing when that happens. It
is amazing. I had to call Karen as soon as it happened to me because I could not believe it. I was traveling. I was on a flight, and the day before, I check on my app. Like I said before, the show is not sponsored by Delta Airlines, but I was flying Delta. I had the Delta app on. I looked on my seat assignment like I do every time I fly the day before, just to make sure everything's all set. And I checked in. It is 20D. I'm all set. I get to the airport. I check again to make sure 20D. Okay, right. I must have checked 3, 4, 5 times because I'm OCD sometimes about that kind of stuff. Yeah. I get on the airplane. I sit down in 20D because I looked at it again. Sit down in 20D. And a couple of minutes later, a woman comes down the aisle and goes, "Oh, you're in my seat." No, of course I'm not. I'm 20D. Oh, no, I'm sorry, miss. The D is the aisle seat. You must mean the middle seat, which is open. And she goes, no, my seat is 20D. I said, no, of course not. I opened up my app to show her. And as I'm watching, I see 20D and in an instant it shifts to 20C. Like an immediate, like I was looking at it for a split second, it said 20D. And then suddenly it said 20C. And this flight attendant, of course, in my shock, it took the flight attendant to say to me, "Oh no, sir, you're in 20C." She was looking over my shoulder. I didn't know what to do. So of course, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I can't understand this. So I went and I sat in 20C. So my question is, because we talk a lot on the show about reality shifting for different reasons, if it's because you have to learn something or there's something that someone needs or something like that. So I was curious, like, what could it possibly mean? Why would reality have shifted in that sense? Why would the universe have gone from a universe where Nelson Mandela died to a universe where Nelson Mandela was alive. What purpose is there in that?
Well, there are lots of purposes. And for one thing, with Nelson Mandela, we get the benefit of decades more of his life and the good things that he said and did and so forth. He was a very positive force for good. With the case of a seat, then you've got a conversation happening that you might not have had otherwise, might bring up the whole topic that you might not otherwise have talked about. And to me, those are good things too. So I would see the silver lining there.
That's a great point. But I question myself why, Curious George having a tail or not? What does that have to do with the T in China, right? Why does 20D and 20C, what's to make the difference? Now, to me, I've been looking for the universe to give me a sign that this stuff that we're talking about is legit. So maybe that was what sign was, the universe going, bam, there it is, Will, stop complaining. I showed you.
Absolutely.
All right, Will. So on behalf of our audience, I'm going to be you now.
Okay. Oh boy.
Were you drinking?
It doesn't matter whether I was drinking or not. That is besides the point. I remember it. I watched it the day before. I saw the seat assignment the day before I had anything to drink.
Okay. Now, but I was just joking with that. But here's like a legit question. Could it have been that the technology, like your seat had been changed and for whatever reason in the computer on the plane, and it had not updated. And you saw the moment it was updating on your phone.
I thought that. I went back and checked, and the seat that I had before was 26D, not 20D.
Maybe you were just, wait, what?
You
were like way wrong.
No.
You were in 20C.
No. I'm sorry. No.
But you thought it had to be 26D?
No. What I thought, I misunderstood you. I thought you meant my previous flight, my previous leg might have been 20D, and it hadn't updated itself to the next flight.
No, I mean like the seating chart of that flight in the computer. Maybe that was updating when you looked at it on your app. Because if it had been like a paper ticket, and you saw that change, holy cow. But like with electronics, you just never know.
That is a fair point. However, you can tell when an app is updating, and there was no updating happening at the time that I saw. Like there's a little thing that goes around the circles when it's updating. There was no update. It just shifted. It just changed. It was immediate.
I just had to be the skeptic.
I understand, but I don't like it. So I'm just skeptic.
Now you're in the hot seat. Now you know what it feels like for the other poor people that you ask those questions to.
I apologize to everyone who's been on the show before. All right. So this conversation is fascinating. I could talk to you about this for an hour, but we got to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to continue speaking with Cynthia Sue Larson about the Mandela Effect and how we potentially are shifting our realities from one reality to another. We'll be right back right after these words. And we're back on the Skeptic Metaphysicians. We are speaking about shifting realities, and we are comparing notes because I had some strange things happen to me that it made me stand up and take notice. I can't explain it. So if you are just tuning in now, then you missed a lot. Rewind the tape and go back and start from the beginning because it would be worth your while. Cynthia, before the break, we're about to go into the science of all this stuff, right? You're going to explain this whole hand waving away and tell us how this all works. So the floor is yours.
Well, I can lay some foundation. I can't explain the whole thing.
Okay.
We'll start with just the idea that in quantum physics, there are some basic principles where you may have heard of spooky action at a distance. That's what Albert Einstein referred to. Yeah.
Absolutely.
When he's talking about this concept of basically entanglement, where there might be sort of a group of quantum particles that they share some properties. They're basically one entangled system in a sense, and they move together, which is to say that if they all have spin up at the same time, or if one spin up and the other spin down, if you make an observation of this one that's next to you, the farther one will be making a corresponding change at the same time. So this is just one of the basic facts about quantum physics. We know that that's true. It sounds really weird because it seems like it's happening regardless of the space between things. And there's been a conjecture about that. Like, are we breaking the speed of light speed limit? If something's able to instantaneously change when it's so far apart. But clearly it can. And all of this definitely does happen based on an observation. So there's the role of conscience agency definitely happening. And this is such the science of the Mandela effect is so huge that I don't think we can adequately address it just in a few minutes, but I want people to
Sure.
understand that some of the principles of quantum physics are laying the groundwork for us to start recognizing that what we're seeing and what we expect to see in the so-called realm of the very, very small also occurs at every level and every scale of reality, including the cosmos, meaning that it can happen that we might notice that we're in a different part of the universe, for example. If
Right.
you, yeah,
Just to back up for a second, because the people who are listening probably know what entanglement is, but there might be some that haven't heard the story. You're referencing a study that was done where particles that were, I guess, connected in some way before were split apart and put, was it 14 miles apart from each other, 7 miles one way, 7 miles the other, and they affected one particle, and they measured to see how long it would take for the other particle to affect the same change, and they found that it was instantaneous. There was no time that went between the two. Is that kind of correct? I'm not a scientist,
Yeah.
so I want to make sure that I
Yeah.
got it right.
That's right. There are constantly experiments confirming this fact that quantum entanglement is quite real property of quantum physics. So that's absolutely for sure. What's
Right.
not so for certain is which of the possible interpretations of quantum physics is happening. What's the reason? What's going on? That kind of thing. That's where the
But there-
conversation happens.
There is a school of thought that says that this proves that if you were one at one point, right, if you were one thing at one point and were separated at some point, then we are always connected at the quantum level, no matter how far away we are. So people are saying this proof that we, like everyone says, we are all one, right? We're all connected.
Right.
So anything that you do to one person actually ultimately affects the others around us, because we were one at one point at the Big Bang. That's something.
Yeah, that's true. And this could tie in with some of the physiological Mandela effects that we are noticing, such as some of us remember what a kidney punch was and where the human kidneys used to be. We remember, I mean, if I just ask you guys now, where do you think the human kidneys are? Like if you put your hands over your kidneys, right? Yeah, well, you're doing it.
Back there?
Yeah,
Yeah, right
you
there,
took
right
care
in the
of
back.
it. Yeah,
Right. Yeah.
that's where they used to be. And so it was illegal in boxing and
What?
martial arts. Yeah, I know.
What do you mean they used to be?
Where are they now?
Where did they go? They have moved slightly upwards to the relative safety of the rib cage. So now when
Come on. No,
Kidneys
they
are
have
in the
not.
rib cage.
they've
What?
lifted up, they've moved up. So it doesn't really make sense to stop the kidney punch from happening because kidneys
Oh
aren't
my
quite
God.
where we remember they used to be. But
Okay,
notice we
that-
don't put our hands there. You know, that's just
Absolutely.
it's totally
Could that
normal
just be
reaction.
evolution?
Well,
Wait, evolution.
We just haven't written. No one's made a good,
I love
skeleton,
it,
whatever,
Karen.
in a long time.
We
I
just-
love it,
no,
Karen.
we-
It's spontaneous
saw-
evolution. It's like a huge jump. It's a quantum
Right.
jump in
Well, that's true.
evolution.
Right.
So it would be-
From the time I woke up yesterday to today, I mean,
Well-
we saw a TV show the other day when the guy got punched in the kidneys in the back, and he was like,
Oh, that's
"Oh, right." So apparently, someone didn't get a memo.
Maybe he
Perfect.
got shot in the spleen and didn't realize it. He thought it was the kidneys.
So you're going to see some residue like that. Some people call it reality residue, where we've got evidence showing that some of us remember that. But remember, if humanity is entangled, and if we're getting some sort of a physiological upgrade like that, then it is happening to all 8 billion people on the planet simultaneously because we are entangled to that degree.
Now I feel all cramped up in here. My kidneys up in my lungs. It's freaking me out.
There's not enough room in there for kidneys.
It's
Get out of here!
not. Go back down.
Oh my goodness, this is incredible.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's freaking me out about the kidneys.
Wait. So everything else we just talked about didn't freak you out? It took the kidneys to freak you
No,
out?
Also, it's
Yes,
getting
because-
personal.
Well, because like you can explain a lot of the stuff away, like the Curious George tail thing. Okay, so maybe some people think they see the monkey, he's wearing pants. If you got pants on, you're not going to have a tail.
You had a little hole in the pant that the tail came out of.
Let me finish. So the other people think he's a monkey, he's got a tail. So they automatically see the tail, the other one see the pants. You know, so I could see some of that stuff happening.
as a
but
matter of
the
fact-
kidneys,
Curious George did not wear pants.
he didn't wear pants?
He did not wear pants. He had a tail, so he couldn't wear
That's right,
pants.
he didn't have pants.
That's
well,
right.
maybe they wanted him to wear pants. And if he'd had pants on, he wouldn't have had a tail.
No, Cynthia, is it possible the third reality came in where Karen remembers Curious George with pants? Could we be living in that much of a difference?
I have seen examples of that, such as the thinker statue. You know, it looks like that statue with the position of the hand is
Oh,
moved
gosh.
around. And so it's been in several different positions for some people. I'm just,
I don't know where it is now.
some people remember it was on the forehead. Some people remember on the chin,
It's the
Where
chin.
is it?
It's definitely the chin. He's like this on the chin. Because
Yeah.
you could see his face. Oh my God. Now I'm second guessing
I
myself.
know.
But-
Oh no.
on the position of it and the way it's positioned is kind of interesting. So it's really good to show like what you remember right now. And that's one where
Mm.
there are several different correct answers, meaning
I
they may
just-
not match what it shows, the Rodin sculpture, but
Uh-huh.
to me, they're all.
I am second guessing my whole life right now.
Oh, everything.
Who
If
are
it-
you?
if it's-
Will?
yeah,
Are we married?
I'm sorry. My name is Steve. Do I know you? Yeah, no, it actually, so it brings up a good point because a while back we had a group of people talking about really deep conversation stuff. And we got into the couple of conversations that might actually relate to this. One was simulation theory, right? That we're
Yes.
all living in a simulation that could put, perhaps
Yes.
people are making changes in it and that could be what we're remembering. The other is the fact that we might just be constructs of each other's reality. So what I see as reality, the way I create the universe is completely different than the way Karen creates the universe. And we are seeing things differently, even it, as much as like, maybe, how do you explain the color green to someone who is blind? Right? You
Right.
can't. So what she sees as green might be purple to me, and we have no way of knowing.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah, I've seen so much evidence to suggest we are getting subjective personal realities. There is some coherence because of the entanglement, so that we're recognizing some things similarly. But there's also this factor that you're mentioning right now, where it can be quite different as well, and that's also kind of disturbing for a lot of people when you realize if you talk.
think?
Yeah, you talk to your family and you talk about early childhood situations when you were a kid and your sibling remembers it quite differently and they're certain that what you remember did not happen that way.
That's
And-
exactly what happened with my brother. He thinks I tortured him, but I know I didn't. I loved him.
Well, my
Yeah.
sister had asthma. Maybe she had a kidney infection this whole time.
There can be some big differences. So it makes a difference to, pay attention to the intentions and the questions that we're asking, intentions about the past and the future. Just keeping things positive is something that I've found makes a huge, good, positive difference as well.
Mm.
Wow. How did you get interested in this? Like, what caused you to?
I was-
do this?
How
I
can
was
you not get
observ-
interested in this?
Yeah, I was
Well, I mean,
observing
enough
this
to
stuff
study it.
because I was watching it happen. I remembered that I went on a vacation with my parents. They made a promise to some wood carvers that we'll get photos of this furniture that they ordered. It was put on a boat from India to the United States. It took a long time to get there. When it finally arrived, then of course there's a whole process of getting it cleaned up and in position. Now it's in the house, and I remind my parents, well, what about the photographs? What photographs? The pictures that you promised you're going to take. And my parents don't lie, but they were assuring me, no, we never made any promise like that. So there was that. And then I heard a song that they were saying, for the first time ever, we're going to play this on the radio. And I'd heard it so many times before that I was completely sick of it. And I thought, you're kidding me. Not that song, And I would ask my sister, do you remember this song? And she didn't know what I was talking about. But these are early examples of the Mandela Effect in the 1970s. And so I've been having it since the 60s, my whole life. And so I know it goes way, way, way back. It's just not
Right.
new, but we're noticing it with the internet.
So Karen, next time I say I didn't say that, it might just be we're in different realities. It's not me not remembering things correctly.
Right.
Yeah, no, now you had an excuse. I don't know how I
totally
feel about
do.
that.
Thank you, Cynthia. I'm all.
Okay. And I said this in court. I was on jury duty selection and I said all
Oh.
this. And guess what? I got selected for the jury. And then
What?
I know. I explained this. The judge leaned forward and he said, but you will abide by the rules of this court. And I said, I'm thinking, did you not just hear everything I said? I said, yes. They said, and he
Oh,
leaned
boy.
back. He was happy and both of the attorneys were happy. So
Wow.
I know.
That's surprising.
Well, I guess I don't know that it made sense to them, but it didn't sound insane so this is very strange times we live in.
It really is. Wow.
I mean, to me, it doesn't sound insane, but it does at the same time. So maybe I'm straddling two different realities. When in one, it's insane, and the other one, it's not, because I'm pretty conflicted on this whole thing.
It is challenging a natural assumption that we have objectivity, that we can make such a thing as an objective observation, and that's one truth that everyone can agree on. It's a direct challenge to that. But then so are some of these other ways of looking at quantum physics. So
Mhm.
that's why it's
And-
interesting to consider the two together.
And now you kind of second guessing. I'm thinking back to maybe people who are in mental institutions, could they remember things differently than everybody else? Could that have been something like this? Maybe they're finding they're just stuck in that other reality. It's scary because there's a slight possibility that, you've seen the sci-fi shows where someone comes back from time and everything's completely different. He's the only one that remembers the way things were, but the rest of his family are strangers to him, that kind of thing. Level with me. How possible is that?
And to some degree, I'd say anything's pretty much possible from what I've seen.
Great.
Well, but there's the good thing. Remember, the entanglement, this is the good thing. Those spooky action at a distance. The fact that we can be entangled with love with one another. The fact that when all of our kidneys change, they all seem to jump upwards together. We get a huge evolutionary improvement, seemingly overnight. So these are good things. That means that if you're noticing a change, typically you're not going to be the only one. And that's what's amazing about the Mandela effect. So many people are together noticing huge changes to what they think was true.
But do you think people will or can use it as an excuse for forgetting conversations or things like Will was joking about?
Joking? What are you talking about?
I tend to believe
This is going to make my life hell.
I believe in the goodness of human beings. I believe that people are not setting out to, be annoying or mischievous or causing trouble for no reason. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
It brings up another point, because another theory that I might think about is the fact that we've talked to people that say that we quantum surf.
Reality transurfing.
Where, they talk about different diverging timelines. And could it be that we are living different timelines, that we remember different things? And Karen that I see here in this conversation might not be the same Karen that I married 15 years ago?
Well, these are good points that you bring up. And Philip K. Dick, he's the author of so many science fiction novels and so forth.
Philip K. Dick, yeah.
Yes, because he brought this up. He gave a talk in Metz, France, where he was really talking about the Mandela effect. He was talking about reality shifts, quantum jumping, reality transurfing, all of this basically, because he was saying, what if you go to flip on a light switch and it's not where you remember it that it was, and it's completely different? And I described this in my book, Reality Shifts, but that was in the 1990s. And here, Philip K. Dick is 20 years ahead of all of us in the 1970s, bringing this up. So I think he really deserves a lot of credit for having the courage to have mentioned that. He also said that he had experienced many timelines. And the title of his talk was, if you think this world is bad, you should see some of the others. That's all about the timeline idea. All about that.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. And Karen, that kind of goes along the lines of our thought processes, where we create our own reality. So to us, because we're really focused on the positive things in life, those negative entities that people talk about all the time, we don't experience that because that doesn't exist in our reality. So this could be the same general effect, where we have decided to go down this timeline, but there's another alternate Karen and Will that went down the other timeline that are right now embattled with demons as we speak.
Well, hopefully not.
I want you to I know, right? My preference would be to prune those timeline, it's like branches on a tree. Can you do that?
I do that all the time, the past and the future, because I don't want any version of me to be taken over by demons. That's unacceptable.
Oh.
Yeah. Any kind of demon activity is unacceptable in my case.
Unacceptable. Yes. I agree.
So how do you do that? How do you prune those timelines?
It's the power of conscious agency and levels of conscious agency. So when we talk about ourself, who am I? What level of conscious agency am I employing? This gets beyond physics, because so far they haven't been looking at these things. I think they're going to have to pretty soon, especially with cubism and relativistic quantum theory and so forth. But basically, let's make it simple. You've got your idea in your head. That's what you're thinking. Your idea in your heart, that's what you're feeling. And your idea in your gut, that's what you know that you need. And it's absolutely has to happen. But if these are not lined up, then you can be pulled different directions. There are also higher levels of conscious agency above what fits in our body. And this gets into when you meditate. You do those meditations where you notice that the thoughts and feelings you're observing are not necessarily you, but you are something greater than that. You're the observer. So what is that observer? So and the more you can identify with these higher levels of conscious agency, the more likely it is that you can start exerting some positive influence along the lines of what I'm talking about, where you can prune those possible timelines in your life that there's no reason that you'd ever wish to inflict on yourself or anyone.
Right. It's like lucid dreaming, but awake.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's amazing. What you're saying about the meditation and all that kind of stuff makes perfect sense. We are the observer, we're the watcher, the whole thing. And we've heard it many times about the closer you are to self, the easier it is to not predict your outcome, but actually create your own reality, create the outcome that you prefer. But for those of us that are not out there meditating and not consciously trying to affect specific changes in us, are we forever trapped in, like, who makes the decisions to jump together? Is it one person? Is it a massive amount of people? Does it have to be a certain critical mass that we make changes? Or can one dude sitting in a corner decide, I want my kidneys in my rib cage?
Usually not one person might be able to affect everything, but that doesn't typically happen. Getting back to your original question, what about the dude who's not meditating? The person they're caught up in it. Some people might call them a non-player character, but I don't. I consider that they're just not a race car yet. They're not revved up and they're not like souped up and super powerful and all engines pulling together as one. Instead, they've got some disalignment probably if they're not meditating. So their head, their heart, their gut, that's not lined up. They're not in a harmonious alignment necessarily. If you meditate, it's more likely you'll start moving toward alignment. Once you're in alignment, then you can start moving toward higher levels of conscious agency. And meanwhile, you're definitely getting the benefit of the tipping point of humanity as we're evolving consciously together. This is huge groundswell. We are reaching a change point as more than 10% of the people in the United States, for example, are meditating. That's having a huge impact. The 100th monkey syndrome, where, all of us being entangled, we're kind of pulling together. A rising tide lifts all boats. And that's definitely happening right now. So that's good news. And
That is good news.
I tend to look at it positively. So even the person who's not meditating, they're getting the benefits. They still need to work on lining things up, at least do that,
Right.
so that what they think they want is what they love and what they truly need. If that's not lined up, what I'm really saying is if they don't, they're going to start manifesting a mess,
That might be actually what's happened, because we are a mess right now. We need to
Yes.
all meditate towards the good, for God's sake.
Yeah.
So how does, I'm sorry, I have so many questions. How does this work with spirituality? So like when you die and you go to wherever you go, is like the whole time reality transferring happening down here? Is it happening up there? Is it both? Are there choices?
I call it quantum jumping. And for me, reality shifting, both are true. And both are popular terms right now too. But what we're doing when we do that is to engage the true identity of who we are, recognizing that maybe this is all Maya. It's all a dream. That's what the ancient teachings say from thousands of years ago. Excuse me. And not only is this a dream, but we also notice that it could be maybe a simulation. That's a newfangled word for the same thing. But if we're looking at that and recognizing if we've got subjective reality, meaning that each individual conscious agent has something to do with what they're experiencing, and we're all co-creating together, and it's all sort of an illusion, then, what is the spiritual truth here? To me, that's very important because it shows that there's an underlying order to everything. And that's what I see when I look deeply. I start seeing that there is ultimate goodness. That I know that's a very precise way of looking at sort of the idea that in philosophy there can be one best possible world. And there's the work of a living philosopher, Nicholas Rescher. He wrote a book called Axiogenesis, picking up the positive philosophy viewpoints and bringing that whole idea forward. And I think it's beautiful. But he's basically taking the ideas that were first proposed by Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz, who was a co-creator for calculus and such a brilliant genius of a person. But he originated the idea of the perennial philosophy, that all of the paths of experience and spirituality kind of lead toward a pinnacle point when you attain the physical experience of stillness, and you instantly acquire very difficult experience to describe, but it's that place where you're in infinity and you're in eternity together. And I think that's the key to this whole process. So yes, it definitely plays a role.
Is it accelerating? Are more and more people realizing these effects, these changes?
Yes, it is accelerating. And it is happening, I think, because in large part, because so many people are experiencing it. There's a huge groundswell of, momentum now. So even people that didn't wish to experience such a thing, and I do hear from them, they say, look, I have not meditated, Cynthia. What's happening? I didn't want this to happen. But it's that rising tide business. It's
Right.
they're noticing reality's changing. It's not what they thought it was.
That explains a lot. Everything we talk about on the show, Karen, because even manifesting could be explained by this, right? The consciousness shift, the timeline, the reality shifts, all that kind of stuff. It could be that we're just hopping into a timeline that gives us what we are asking for. It's super exciting because I had been asking for a sign for a very long time. I've seen the numbers, right? The 333s and the 1111s, all that kind of stuff. And I've been opening myself up more and more to a point where a lot of people are telling me you're trying too hard. So very recently, I decided to just release, surrender. Let's see what happens. If something happens, happens. If it doesn't, it's okay. I'm here for a reason and that's all good. And as soon as I did that, bam, the seat changed from 20D to 20C. So I welcome these reality shifts because it makes me sit up and go, holy smokes, this stuff is real.
And if that wasn't great, that was an upgrade too, because C is passing. So yay. You passed.
Yes. I love it.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
It's just so I'm thinking about it now. And I have this visual of like the earth, like surrounded by all these lines of all these million people and their realities and this frenetic energy, and it's chaotic and stressing me out. I mean, how do you, if you're thinking, if this is what the reality is, how do you find peace?
Oh, this is where grounding is important. So walking barefoot, just laying down on the grass or on the earth, if you're able to do that, hug a tree if you can do that. Meditate if that works for you. Anything, maybe for some people, music, for some people, slowing their breathing down. So there are many, many ways to do this, but it's becoming essential for our sanity nowadays to really get grounded, stay relaxed, laugh if you can.
And just one more question. The quantum jumping, is it something that you have to intentionally do, or does it happen? And if it just happens all the time, can you intentionally stop it so you can just kind of have that one reality?
The way I use the terminology, back in the 1990s, I was calling it reality shifting when it was a random thing that just happened, like a Mandela effect. And then later I worked with the term quantum jump to indicate this is something intentional. And I like to use caution when doing intentional quantum jumps because we might think we're doing something that we think we want, but really make sure it's lined up with your heart, lined up with what you actually need, and don't get anything that you don't actually need. Because this really is a spiritual practice and you are impacting much more than what we realize. It's huge.
That's a great point. So should we just be happy with what we've got rather than try to make things happen?
I would recommend just keep asking how good can it get and how good can I get, and really bring this idea of optimalism into your life, because we know what it is subconsciously and we know what we need. And it kind of helps you relax. And then suddenly things aren't so hard or difficult. I mean, it might seem difficult, but you can relax at least so that you can trust and have faith that there's something, that there's a higher order going on, that there's some connection happening, and that there's a higher level of conscious agency working in favor for all of us.
I found my new mantra. How good can it be? How good can it get? That is fantastic. That's such a great way to look at life. I'm going to be saying it all the time. Karen, how good can it get?
Yes.
That's fantastic. Thank you.
Great.
Yeah. We are woefully out of time. This has been a fantastic conversation. Is there anything else that we haven't touched on that you want to make sure that everyone listening gets?
Just to remember that you're much more important and significant, and the thoughts that you're having, the feelings you're having, definitely are having a very powerful effect. So I would definitely recommend start each day with that question, how good can it get? And ask it no matter how you're feeling, no matter what's going on. Even if it seems sarcastic, say it anyway. Challenge the cosmos. We're in a participatory universe, and you'll definitely get a good answer when you ask a good question. So keep asking the questions that you most want to live the answers to.
That's excellent.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah. So you heard it first here. If you want to reach out to us, we'd love to hear how good can the show get. So let us know what you'd like to hear. Of course, Cynthia, we're going to add all the links to your website, your social media, all that kind of stuff on our show notes. So all you need to do is go to skepticmetaphysician.com and you'll find her links directly laid into her episode. So don't delay, reach out to her because this was absolutely fascinating. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing of this wisdom and information and mind-altering thought processes, because Karen and I are going to be thinking about this for a long time.
A long time.
Oh, thank you so much. It was such a pleasure. Love talking with you both.
Likewise. And Karen, we got some splaining to do.
I know, and I'm going to be Googling kidneys.
All right. Thanks again.
And a huge thank you to you. Yes, you, the person that hit play on this episode. We know that there are tons of options out there, and having you decide to come along on our journey of discovery with us is an absolute honor for us. We hope you've enjoyed this conversation as much as we have. We'd love for you to contribute by sending us a voicemail or an email from our website, or leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or any other podcasting platform that supports them. Karen and I love hearing from those that are moved to message us. It truly does fuel our passion. You are the reason we do this show, and knowing what you like and don't like help us craft the very best show we can so that we can help raise the vibration of the planet together. Well, that's all for now. We'll see you on the next episode of The Skeptic Metaphysicians. Until then, take care.